Okay, so as people come in, we're going to get started. Good afternoon. I'm your host, Tara McGrath, and the Communications Director for Los Angeles Rabbit Foundation. Welcome to our bunny bonding webinar. We'll first do an overview presentation covering the basics on bunny bonding, and then the founder of Los Angeles Rabbit Foundation, House Rabbit Society Chapter Manager, Michelle Kelly, will be answering your questions. Please use the question and answer box during the presentation, and we'll get to as many questions as we can at the end. Our presenter today is Emily Baker. She is the Education Director for Los Angeles Rabbit Foundation. She has an MA in Museum Studies from Johns Hopkins University and is also currently working as a museum educator at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. Go ahead, Emily. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. So hello, everyone. As Tara said, I'm Emily Baker, and welcome to our rabbit bonding webinar. We'll be together for about an hour or so. We'll start with the presentation and then move on to an open Q&A. So our presentation today is going to cover the basics of rabbit bonding. But before we get started, allow us to save you the trouble of listening to the presentation and suggest right off that you adopt a pre-bonded pair of rabbits. So most new bunny parents want to start out with just one rabbit, thinking that it's easier. So pairs are often overlooked in shelters and rescues. If you're a beginner, we definitely suggest you save yourself the trouble of bonding later and start off with a pair. And if you adopt a pair, you are saving an extra life. So that's a big bonus. Now, that all said, there are a lot of single bunnies out there, and we want to help you find them a friend. So this presentation will go over each phase in the process of rabbit bonding, and it definitely is a process, that is for sure. So at the end of each section, I'm going to ask our expert, Michelle Kelly, a few of the questions you sent to us ahead of time, so keep your ears open for those. So first off, before you even start the process of bunny bonding, there are some things to think about. So as herd animals, rabbits love having a member of their own species to snuggle and groom. It's true that many people work from home and can give rabbits attention most of the time. However, the attention we give them isn't going to be the same as the attention they would get from another rabbit. For example, we cannot groom their ears in exactly the same way that they would want their ears groomed. So when bonded with a friend, rabbits live longer on average. You'll be saving another rabbit's life, and your rabbit will never be alone when you have to leave the home. Finally, there is nothing more heartwarming than watching two rabbits snuggling and grooming one another. So all of this equals a happier, healthier bunny, which is the ultimate goal here. Now, even though you absolutely should work on finding a friend for your rabbit, there are some things you need to take into consideration before starting the process. So the first and most important is that this can be a dangerous process for both you and the rabbits. Rabbits can kill each other, whether by injury or being scared into a heart attack. So if a fight breaks out, you're going to be the one to step in and remove a rabbit. You may be on the receiving end of a misplaced nip. So we're definitely going to cover this a little bit later in the presentation, what you should do there. Bonding can also mean more expenses. So this can be from hiring a professional bonder, from vet bills from injuries sustained during bonding, but also remembering that rabbits are not cheap pets, and you're committing to keeping your new friend healthy, which means regular vet visits and the bills that come with those. You need to make sure you have the time and space available to ensure a smooth bonding process, but also you need to consider what to do if these rabbits just don't bond. So the rabbit you picked out may not be the perfect fit, but you also may not be able to return it if you outright adopted it. So if you keep this rabbit but the two aren't bonded, this means you're going to need double the living space for these rabbits. So knowing you'll want to find a close, if not perfect match the first time, in order to cut down on the dangers and drawbacks of bonding, we suggest you consider rabbit speed dating. So bunny speed dating events are a great way to see how open your rabbit might be to another rabbit. Rabbit rescuers may host speed dating at a mobile adoption location or a shelter. And if you have a rabbit rescue near you, this is truly the best way to get a friend for your rabbit. There are enormous benefits to adopting a rabbit from a rescue that has volunteers experienced with bunny bonding. They can help you make the safest and best match for your rabbit based on the personalities of the rabbit in their care. They can give you tips on bonding and will probably be available for consultation if you need help. So also, rescues have an ethical obligation to take the second rabbit back or exchange if the bond doesn't ultimately work out. So this is sort of a foster to adopt setup, and it's definitely going to be the best way to find a friend for your bunny instead of adopting outright without letting your first rabbit meet the new one. So the added bonus here is that your rabbit will not only show you if they're even open to bonding, but they'll also get to show you their preferences as well. Another important aspect to remember is that this new friend is for your rabbit's happiness. So if you go into this planning on getting a rabbit of a specific color or a rabbit with the same markings so they match, you may be disappointed. When at the speed dating event, you should allow for at least 1 to 2 hours of dating time once your rabbit has shown preference for a particular rabbit. When first introduced, the rabbits might be too tense to show you how they really feel at first. You need to give a little bit of time. Also on that note, it's still possible they may not bond once you take them home, but giving them this opportunity to meet outside your home first will be a good first step on the path to bonding. So there are some good directions to take when looking for a match. The right age is probably the lowest priority on this list. There are other things that are much more important to take into account, but keeping them in a similar age range will ensure that they'll have something to grow old with. And it's also important to remember that adult rabbit personalities do differ greatly from the babies. More important are the hormone and energy levels. If you have a high energy bunny, you'll want to match that energy. Hormone levels play a part in the bonding process, so it's important that the rabbits are both spayed and neutered before you start bonding, before those hormones start to shift around. Dominant and submissive personalities will especially come out when they start to meet other rabbits. Some rabbits will demand kisses and grooming, while other rabbits are more than happy to be the ones giving the kisses out. Rescuers will likely know the bonding history of rabbits in their care, so they'll be able to let you know if a rabbit has had difficulty in the past with bonding and won't be a good candidate for bonding with your rabbit. Male-female pairs are often the most stable, but not always. And it's important to remember, again, that the rabbit gets to pick, not you. So I have a few questions here from the audience for Michelle, basically related to bunny, the things to think about first. The question we've got here is, Michelle, how definitive is the speed date in terms of forecasting whether or not the rabbits will eventually bond?
That's certainly an excellent question, because there isn't a guarantee that rabbits will do well in an hour or two. Just because they do well in an hour or two, that they will continue to bond later on. Because as you discussed earlier, they can be nervous and not show their true nature of their relationship. I would say that it definitely helps gauge and get it in the right direction. So for example, if you have a rabbit that is attacking the other rabbit, that's clearly a very bad sign. And if you have one rabbit that's extremely submissive and that gives you good signs, and we'll talk about that later on, what are and are not good signs, that gives you an indication, but not a guarantee that they will work out. I would say that it definitely helps prevent a tragic outcome to take them on dates first, to make sure that the bonding isn't going to be dangerous. And one of the things that we suggest that people do is bring rabbits to speed dates more than once. So if you can meet and try the date once and then maybe try it again for a slightly longer time, that will give you a better feel for whether or not those two are going to work out. But there's never a 100% guarantee that they will work out. It just helps give you a good idea if they're likely to, which is why I think it's really important to work with a shelter or rescue that will be there for you as a support network, that will be there just to answer your questions, and to also, and sad to say, sometimes you have to exchange the rabbit, or maybe it's not going to work out at all. But if you do work with a rescue that will take the rabbit back if it doesn't work out, that's the ideal situation. So not a 100% guarantee, but probably more than 50% and definitely way better than just picking a bunny off the internet. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it's kind of like humans, right? You know, the first date, you're on your best behavior, hopefully, but there might be some red flags there. Great, thank you, Michelle. All right, so you've put a lot of thought into it. You know what it takes to find a good match for your rabbit. So let's move on to phase one, prepping for bonding. All right, so first we are going to prep the rabbits. So rabbits must be spayed and neutered for a minimum of 2 weeks, preferably for over a month, prior to introducing them to any other rabbits. The only exception is that babies under 6 weeks of age can usually be quickly and easily combined with other babies. You'll want to vaccinate for RHDV2 at least 18 days, which equals 2 life cycles of the virus, prior to introduction. Since no vaccine is 100% effective, and taking into consideration other diseases and issues, it's also important to keep the rabbits indoors and away from other animals during that quarantine period. And finally, you'll want to make sure your bunny and all potential partners are healthy with no underlying health conditions that would make bonding risky. A vet can help you determine that. It's always wise to get clearance from that vet prior to taking those rabbits on dates. So you'll also want to be sure to groom the rabbits. Trim down those nails to cut down on injuries, brush that extra fur out, spiff them up, but leave the scent glands alone. Also, because those are going to be really helpful in helping the rabbits to get to know each other. So there's a list of the basics you'll need to get started. You'll see this list right here. It includes 2 metal play pens, flooring underneath the pens like soft blankets, spacers to go into the pens, 3 litter boxes. You'll need 2 for their home-based pens and 1 for dates. 2 sets of food and water dishes. Pen covers are a big one. They need to be either the hard metal covers that rest on top of the pens, or you can also clip sheets to the top of them as well, so the rabbits can't get to each other before they're ready. You'll want gloves or oven mitts for your hands in case you need to separate them during a date. And a large top opening carrier that can fit both rabbits inside together. And lastly, hay and leafy greens for those dinner dates they're about to go on. And then next you'll want to prep your home. So a neutral space in your home is a space with no smells associated with the home rabbit. They'll have marked it as their territory and they won't want anyone invading it. So you're going to need 2 neutral spaces that have either been deep cleaned or that your rabbit doesn't regularly go into. One of them is going to be for living in and gradually getting used to each other's presence. And one of them is going to be for dating in. So that dating space should be a little bit smaller. It should have few distractions there. So we're going to show you an example of a temporary living setup here. So this is going to be used during the bonding process. First, you'll notice we've got spacers there. We're going to have bricks or other objects to make a 6-inch or greater clearance. That's super, super important. I cannot emphasize how important it is. Rabbits can absolutely get their claws and little noses and mouths right in there. So we want to be sure that they can't push the cages together. The pens are light, the rabbits are strong, they can push those walls of the pens right there up next to each other. So you need to make sure that these sturdy spacers cannot be wobbled out. We've got bricks in this picture. One of my favorites is a big jug of vinegar that you should probably have around for cleaning purposes anyway. That's nice and strong and can't get pushed out of the way. So you'll see that we've mirrored the dishes and the litter boxes here. That's going to give the rabbits kind of the illusion that they're doing things together. That's a good one. You'll want to make sure the pens are covered for safety. So you'll want any sort of cover, like we said, it can be the hard cover or it can be sheets just clipped to the surface. Lastly, we don't have them here, but you'll want hiding boxes for the rabbit. That can be either a cardboard box with the hole cut into it, something as simple as that. It can also be, I know that for our organization, we've got Boy Scouts who volunteer to build wooden boxes for our rabbits. That's really nice. That's a great way for them to hide. You just want them to have a place where they can de-stress a little bit. So just a little place to calm down. A pro tip we like to use is giving your rabbits teddy buns to groom. They'll get their scent on it. You can swap those back and forth between the rabbits so they gradually get used to the smell that way, just like you'll want to do with their litter boxes as well. And then finally, if your rabbit is already free roam, it's not really going to appreciate being penned up again. So a different option you can do is let your rabbit continue to be free roam and put the, oh, I see a teddy bun is a teddy bear, but a bunny. I saw that question come in, so I can answer that right there. So just a stuffed rabbit kind of fools them. But the alternate setup, you can let your rabbit continue to free roam, and then you can set up a pen in another room and put a pet gate across the door, making sure you have those 6 inches right there. Or that way you can give the rabbit a free roam room, the new one, or you can put a pen in there and keep that rabbit close at hand there. So those are alternate options, but this is a really great way to set up the space for side-by-side living. So you've got the neutral space set up, neutral living space set up rather, and now you need a small neutral space for dating. So you'll want to keep the introduction area minimalist with just a fresh hay box, water bowl, and some leafy greens for the rabbits to share on a dinner date. Make sure you set the mood too, right? A nice quiet environment will keep the stress levels down for everybody involved, including yourself. And let's go back to Michelle for a few questions regarding the setup process for bonding. So first, Michelle, I know we have some viewers wondering about how much damage a rabbit can actually inflict on one another through the sides of the pen, and what are the dangers of that?
Yes, one of the things that happens if you have two rabbits that have access to direct access to a pen with no spacers is that they may claw or bite through the bars of the pen. Now you can avoid this by putting a hardware cloth liner on the pen, but that also has some limitations because it's hard to fold it up and everything. So it's actually better to have that spacer if at all possible. Rabbits can do some pretty serious damage to one another's noses. They can create what we call a nose flap, where they bite, they cut the other rabbit's nose with their claws or their teeth, and then it sticks out and it can get infected. And the thing is, as we all know, bunnies' noses move constantly, so you can't just glue it back together. So if you, for instance, got a wound on the side of the bunny, and it was a very short one, you could glue it together. A veterinarian could glue it together. We wouldn't do this at home. We would still go to the vet. But with a nose, it's tricky because it moves all the time. So it's very expensive. You need to possibly anesthetize the rabbit and sew up that nose, and it's also disfiguring. So nose flaps is a big issue with bunnies that can reach one another, but also when they're able to reach through and claw and bite one another, that sets you back on the bonding process. So as always, you want to avoid any negative history. You have to make sure that they are unable to hurt one another at all times.
Great, thank you. Another attendee said that they've rescued a month-old baby girl rabbit from the park. They want to know when it's safe to spay her and how long they should wait after spaying to try and bond her with their neutered adult male rabbit that they already have.
Oh, this is a great question because we can talk about a couple of things here. First of all, I would never put a baby rabbit with an adult rabbit. I've seen situations where we have rounded up groups of rabbits that were, backyard breeder, or just a situation, an outdoor situation where they bred out of control, and the adult males or females, but sometimes I saw one case where a couple of the adult males were just going around killing all the babies. It's very easy for an adult rabbit to kill a baby because the baby's skin is more friable. It means it tears more easily. So they can just, with one kick, they can honestly eviscerate the baby. And that's why I don't ever recommend that an adult be put with a tiny baby. And the other part of that is babies change as they grow, and then they might not get along later. So we recommend that you introduce adults to adults and tiny young babies under, say, 6 weeks with other babies. But in that in-between stage, it gets very tricky. So the female rabbit can't be spayed until she's at least 4, and if she's safe from breeding with other rabbits, preferably 6 months of age, by an experienced exotic veterinarian. I would keep the babies separate during this time, but maybe cross-scent them a little bit so that they can get used to one another's smells. Maybe you could have a setup where they can see one another, but definitely can't get to one another. And while I'm on that subject, you know, Emily talked about covering the pens with a wire cover. Rabbits will jump pens that they would never normally jump when they're bonding. So for example, you hear stories about people who wake up in the morning and the bunnies have jumped in and gotten in with each other and they never thought they could jump, right? So it's really important that you have to keep the pen situation totally safe, and especially if you have a vulnerable rabbit, if you know your rabbits are volatile, and in this case, when you're dealing with a baby. So the baby gets spayed, she grows up a bit, and she gets spayed when she's 4 to 6 months of age. And if you have a boy rabbit, he can be neutered anytime that his testicles descend, as long as a veterinarian is comfortable doing that. And then afterward, after they're neutered, young rabbits need at least, I would give them at least a month to recover from the neuter, and at least 2 weeks, preferably a month for the female to recover from the spay. And actually, when now that we're talking about neutering and how long it takes, it can actually take up to 6 months for rabbits to kind of calm down to the point where they can be rebonded after neuter. In rescue, we sometimes see a male-female pair come in and they're not neutered, but they love each other. They are siblings maybe, and we want to put them back together again. And we neuter them and they're just not ready for 2, 3, maybe even a little bit longer, but eventually they do rebond. So once your little female is spayed, then you can start moving them a little bit closer together, maybe have them within sight, and then you can start, you know, actively switching them back and forth between the playpens or the living areas once she has recovered for a couple of weeks after the spay. And that's how you would transition to a bond with those 2 rabbits.
Great, thank you. And then last, we have somebody who they have a free range rabbit at home. They'd like to set up a bonding situation for this rabbit, but they live in a studio, so there's not really any neutral space. What tips do you have for that?
Yeah, that's really tricky. The studio setup is very tricky. I mean, if you have a free roam rabbit and you have more than one room, you can do the thing with the 2 pet gates across a doorway and give one bunny one room and one another, or one in a pen. One of the mistakes that people make when they're bonding rabbits with a studio is they set up a pen in the middle of the studio, and then their free range rabbit can bite and they get jealous of one another. The one that's in the pen gets mad that I'm not free, you know, why is he free and I'm not, you know? So, and then the home bunny alternatively, or the one that's loose, is saying, well, why is this rabbit in my territory? I'm going to try to bite. So it's always best if you have no neutral territory and a small space to work with, if you can try to get someone else to bond them for you, or bond them someplace else, and then bring them home. And since after you bring them home, you have to also have neutral territory, you really need to keep them in a neutral space before you let them have access to the home bunny's stuff for about a week. What you would want to do, first of all, if you don't have any place else to bond them, then you will have to do a pen by pen, pens next to each other. And you might have to use smaller pens, like fold them up into 2 by 4 and have a spacer, and just supervise when they're exercising, I guess, and switch them back and forth. Then when you're moving to the neutral home territory, you would make a big pen, change the flooring and everything, and wash out the litter box or use a 3rd litter box and set that up. And that's your neutral territory, would be a pen in the center of your studio. And then only after they've been good in that pen in the center of the studio could you then let them be free? And you can also maybe use the bathroom as neutral territory, because bathrooms have tile or linoleum, and you can really clean those thoroughly and try to get the smell of the home rabbit out. If you have carpeting in your bathroom, or the bathroom's too small and you're in a studio, then you're kind of stuck, and you have to go with setting up an artificial neutral territory with maybe linoleum or hard plastic with a pen over that in the center.
Okay, those are great tips. Thank you, Michelle. All right, so you've done all the prep work, your rabbit is ready, your home is ready, so let's get into the dating game. So assuming you've gone to a speed dating event or how to rescue, help pick out a good first option, you're gonna have a good shot at love. If you had several choices in partners, always start with the one most likely to work. And as we said, not the one you like best. This is because a positive initial experience can make other introductions more likely to succeed, while a negative experience can make it difficult for subsequent introductions to work. You'll want that atmosphere to be calm, and be sure to introduce rabbits after they've been fed and exercised, perhaps midday when their energy is a little lower, so they'll be calmer and less active. You want to head into bunny dates with full, happy bunnies. So during a bonding date, you're going to start by placing the bunnies side by side on your lap, in a litter box, or next to one another on the floor, with their heads facing in the same direction. Nose to nose, tail to tail. Keep your hands on the rabbits, making sure that one rabbit does not turn sideways to bite the other. And at the beginning stage, be a helicopter parent. Do not allow the rabbits to face one another or go head to tail. Pet them to mimic grooming, and also to get them cross-scented. If they both seem calm, try to get them to share some leafy greens. And rabbits typically bond over hand greens, but they may fight over high reward items. So avoid any really special treats that your bunny is really excited about. The most important rule during this stage of the process is do not allow fighting. Gently press a bunny's head down to stop him from lunging at the other rabbit. Always focus on controlling the rabbit most likely to attack. Watch for signs of potential aggression or territorialism to head off any attacks well before they happen. And start with short dates, gradually increasing the time, allowing for more freedom of movement if there are no signs of aggression. Always end on a high note if possible. If one bunny grooms one another, or they're eating together, end the date there so they have a good memory of the interaction. And then you will put the bunnies back in the side-by-side bonding pen setup. So it's going in the right direction when rabbits are trying not to attack one another, particularly when they start to relax. If they ignore one another or groom themselves in one another's presence, that means they're not seeing the other rabbit as a threat. So that's a great sign. And it's also a great sign when rabbits lie against one another and lean in, or if they're giving each other gentle kisses. So it's normal for rabbits to establish hierarchy by humping one another, as long as the one being humped is okay with it. So it's also normal for one rabbit to chase the other one a little bit, again, as long as the one being chased is tolerating it. So as long as there is no violent intent and the rabbit being chased engages in avoiding behavior and does not appear overly stressed, it's okay. So some good body language is right here on the screen for you. When one rabbit puts their head under the other rabbit's chin, that means they want to be groomed. It's also a sign that they're willing to accept the other bunny. Grooming oneself and sharing food means they're getting comfortable with one another. Kissing or grooming the other bunny is obviously a really great sign. You're definitely on your way there to a bonded pair, hopefully. And when rabbits are really comfortable, they'll let each other touch backs, just like you see in that middle picture there. Their backs are touching there, or on the tummy. And on the bottom right, you'll see that not only are the bunnies sleeping together, but one of them has their leg draped over the other. So that is the ultimate sign of comfort right there, right? So these are all signs that you're on your way to a bonded pair. But what if your rabbits don't look like this? So when to stop? There are indications when you should stop the bonding process. If one or both of the rabbits goes in for an attack, you'll need to immediately intervene. You'll be able to tell if the chasing is not friendly play, especially when you see one of the rabbits try to nip the other's backside or underbelly. And if fighting occurs, you'll need to be ready to step in immediately. Keep oven mitts or gloves nearby in the beginning so that you are ready to go if you need to intervene. And have a large piece of cardboard or something like that on hand. You can quickly slide it in between those two bunnies to prevent them from injuring each other while you head in and grab one of them. So if both rabbits want to hump, then you may have two dominant personalities on hand. That's going to make a difficult match there. If humping or chasing is not tolerated in any way, tensions feel high, or grooming looks a little on the rough side, then you may want to take a break. So you've got some examples of bad body language here. This may mean the bonding session is not going too well. You see a defensive stance there, tail up, ears back, but still listening and on alert, not the relaxed ears back. Rough grooming and persistent mounting may be tolerated at first, but by the subservient bunny, but they may eventually decide that enough is enough. That's another reason that bonding really takes time. Rabbits may eventually let each other know that they're tired of the behavior that they seemed sort of okay with at first. Other territorial signs include marking with their chins or spraying. Going for the other rabbit's backside is another. And then head to tail circling is a definite indicator of a fight about to break out. Remember, we started off this date nose to nose, tail to tail. So this is a dangerous position to be in. So you'll want to stop the circling before it turns into a fight. Rabbit fights are fast and difficult to control once they start, and their little jaws are very strong. Once they bite down, they don't like to let go. So it can lead to some very serious injuries. All right, so let's say you had to intervene. Unless it seems truly, truly dangerous, for example, a major fight, don't give up the bonding just yet. Remember, it's a process and some bunnies just take a little while to warm up to others. There's some ways you can sort of reset things and try again. First, take a break, keep them in their neutral pen side by side and start out again with very short basic dates, placing the rabbits side by side again, making sure they can't turn sideways and bite one another. Give the rabbits and yourself a break for a few days or weeks. That's good for your stress levels, good for the rabbit stress levels. Keep switching those litter boxes in between and those teddy buns, those stuffed animals that look like rabbits, so that they're used to each other's scent. One option is the quote unquote scary car ride or indoor shopping cart ride. Those are a great reset tool when done properly and with caution. We'll talk to Michelle about that a little bit later. Just make sure someone is right there next to the rabbit, separate them if necessary. If rabbits fight in a moving vehicle, they probably are not going to bond. So that's a red flag there. And finally, if you find that introducing them in the bathroom doesn't work after a couple tries, try a new location, try a different technique. Another note is that rabbits can debond, right? So if you have a bonded pair that hits a rough patch, you can usually reset them fairly quickly with just a single scary car ride and put them right back into their living space. But if they continue to fight, you may have to rebond them from scratch, starting over again with side-by-side pen setup. The key to preventing debonding is to first make a safe match. And then second, to take rabbits together wherever you go to the vet, just any time that they're going anywhere, you take them together. All right, so we're going to go back to Michelle with a few questions that we got ahead of time. And that first one is about stress bonding. People are a little confused about what stress bonding is, assuming it's controversial because it sounds stressful. And when, if ever, is stress bonding appropriate and what are the risks and benefits?
Yeah, the bonding process itself is inherently stressful, and that's why we encourage everyone to get a vet check in advance and not to introduce compromised rabbits to begin with. Think of stress as in bonding as a continuum. However, there are certain techniques that are known to be stress bonding techniques, and some of them you just shouldn't do. And there are some differing opinions on these things. So this is my opinion and what has worked for me. And I'm going to tell you that I have never lost a rabbit to bonding, and I've never had any serious injuries resulting from bonding ever in over 20 years. Now, I've been lucky. I've been very lucky. But, and I've had some that went into GI stasis from stress and we saved them. But you really don't want to push that stress too far. So techniques like putting them on a washer, running a vacuum cleaner, using dogs, or I don't like spraying with water bottles. It's not so much because of the stress, but just because you're introducing bacteria. And also it doesn't really work, frankly. If they're really intent on getting to one another, sort of squirting at them doesn't work. What does work more in breaking up, if you're, say you're away from the pen and they start to fight and you run toward them, quick noises like clapping your hands, really loud shriek, like scream, that might get them to stop for a second until you can get in there. So back to stress bonding. I know that we used to talk, there was in the old house rabbit handbook, there was a section that talked about bathtub bonding. That's another one I don't like because they can slip and injure one another. Another technique that's part of stress bonding is the scary car ride. Now, I do use the scary car ride. I really like a modified version of it that's called the scary cart ride. The reason I use them is because, again, I haven't had any fatalities from it and it works. The scary car ride works, but you have to do it when it's cool out. Don't risk any heat stroke. When you do it, make sure their stress level doesn't go too high. Don't go too far away from home, so that if you do see a bunny stressing, and have a second person sitting next to a top open carrier on the seat so they can break up fights if absolutely needed. If they fight in a moving vehicle, I think Emily said this already, they are not probably going to bond. But otherwise, it is usually generally safe. I always use a towel at the bottom of the carrier so they don't freak out and slip around, because that will increase their stress level. And also, you don't want to use an enormous carrier with little bunnies because they can just separate, but you also don't want to use a teeny tiny carrier so that they can overheat because they're too squished together. So one of those larger 2 bunny carriers with a top opening is great for this purpose. If you do use the scary car ride carefully, then one of the mistakes people make is they put the bunny in a carrier and then a minute later they pick it up to go to the car and the bunnies are already fighting. When you use this technique, you have to immediately start walking with the carrier as soon as you put the second bunny in, and maybe even wiggle a little bit till you get in the car and start going. And you don't want to stress them out too much with loud music or anything like that. The idea is to just bring just a little bit of outside force to play so that they're a little bit nervous and they turn to one another for comfort. The way that you might, if you're watching a scary movie on a date, you might throw your arms around one another. They then see the other bunny as not a threat, but a source of solace. Now, that is a technique that works really well, but I don't use it unless other techniques aren't working. It's just the safest form of what might fall into stress bonding techniques. Again, it's all on a continuum, but you can see obviously that using a vacuum cleaner is a very high stress method. And I would never recommend that. And like I said, I don't like bathtubs or using other animals or anyone doing anything violent to try to get the bunnies together. You know, you want to keep the stress level. You want to do a calm bonding if at all possible. And I understand that there are situations where people have 2 rabbits that they have, through no fault of their own, rescued or inherited or something, and they're trying to make the bond work, and they have limited space, and they feel really stressed, the people do, and they feel like they have to make it work. Well, first of all, I encourage you to try to change that mindset and just realize that it might not work. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't work. The most important thing is that you not kill the rabbits during the bonding. This is really, really critical. It has to stay safe. So if you see a bunny starting to shake, if they're just too nervous, too stressed, then you have to back off and use a different method. Another thing that is sort of associated with stress bonding is instead of using a 2-pen switching back and forth, a lot of people will try right away with a very small space. And this is the way professional rabbit bonders do it typically, because we don't have time. We have maybe a week while someone's on vacation and we're bonding their rabbits. We will start out with a large carrier with hay in it, and we'll put the bunnies in there. And then when they're safe in there, and then we'll graduate to a larger space like a playpen, and we'll watch them there. It is stressful because the rabbits can't get away from one another if you have them in a carrier for an extended period of time, other than a 5-minute scary car ride, for example. So that's also stress bonding when you have them in a very small space. And again, it works. It is one of the techniques that does work well for some rabbits. And I think it's okay too. But just kind of try to use common sense about something. I mean, obviously, if you have them on top of a washer, you're not right there watching them. That's a very stressful environment. They could fall off. I wouldn't do that. So that's my short answer on stress bonding. Don't do it unless you have to. And the techniques that you use I would limit to putting them in a smaller space or a scary car ride. Oh, and I love the scary cart ride. The scary cart ride is a safer version of the scary car ride. So we used to have, back before COVID, we used to have mobile adoptions inside a pet food supply store. They don't sell animals, they just host adoptions. Thank you, Sentinella Feed. And we could put the carrier in a shopping cart and drive it around the store. And the benefit to that is that you're in an air-conditioned environment. You can have a second person, or even you can just stand there. You can even do it with the top of the carrier open. And I really like this technique because it helps. If the two bunnies, for example, you're taking rabbits on speed dates and they're sitting at opposite ends of the pen, and then you put them together and then they go apart again. It's a way of kind of forcing them to interact enough so that you can better evaluate the likelihood that these two rabbits will bond. So that's my short answer on stress bonding.
Right. So it sounds like, stress bonding should not be the first technique you go for, but when done in a safe, managed way, it seems like it could be a good technique. So we're going to move on to phase 3. It's a match. And what to do in a good scenario. So best case scenario, your buns have made a love match. Where do you go from here? It's still got to be a slow process. You're almost there though. If you rush things, you may risk breaking the bond for good. You've had several successful dates together, and now you're ready to move on to the next steps. So gradually increase the time of supervised play dates. Notice I still said supervised. Rabbits can turn on a dime, so you need to keep a close eye and continue to helicopter parent during this time. Combine their living space, but have it set up so you can quickly separate them if necessary. And plan to spend 48 hours supervising the rabbits and be ready to jump in with them at a moment's notice. For the first overnight, it's best to sleep in the pen with the rabbits. I know that sounds kind of silly, but it's a really great way to go. Another technique that pro bunny bonders use is to keep a very large carrier on wheels next to your bed. You can fall asleep with your hand on the carrier. If they start to fight, you'll know, and you'll wake up and you can immediately break them up. So after 2 overnights together with no fighting, most rabbits are safe together. You can start to lighten supervision after 48 hours of cohabitation with no incidents. And like Michelle said earlier, a great tip is if you see trouble start to brew from outside the pen, you can whistle or clap your hands or snap your fingers, startle the rabbits until you can physically intervene, since you won't be helicoptering as much. And then the next step is to move from neutral territory to home turf. So moving in together. If the rabbits have lived together safely for 48 hours, you're in the home stretch. So it's important to keep the rabbits in neutral territory for a minimum of 1 week to further solidify the bond before allowing them to live together in your first rabbit's space. So when you're prepping that first rabbit space, be sure to remove any item that belongs to the home bunny, such as that hiding house or stuffed toys, their original litter box, anything that may have absorbed their smell. Otherwise, you risk that first bun becoming territorial of their home space all over again. So even after a deep cleaning, your rabbit may still consider the space his territory. Therefore, you're going to want to continue to monitor for the first week or two after you move the rabbits into their newlywed home. Once they've gotten along in their living area for a couple of weeks, you have yourself a pair of happily bonded bunnies. So how do you know they're bonded? These are some of the key indicators that you have a successful bond. There's been no fighting for at least 48 hours while living together. They eat together and share a litter box safely. And once the bond deepens, they'll work out a relationship dynamic. So they'll figure out who's going to groom one another. They're going to sleep together. You'll know the bond is really solid when they want to do everything together and engage in mirroring behavior. So mirroring is when one rabbit washes his right paw and the other one's going to wash their right paw. Just remember that once they're bonded, they should not be separated. Bonded bunnies go everywhere together, including to the vet, unless one's going for surgery. And you just don't want to break up that new bunny love or old bunny love. Don't ever want to break up bunny love. All right, so we've got another couple of quick questions on the match. So Michelle, what are some alternatives for creating neutral home territory besides camping out in the bathroom for a whole week?
Yeah, that's a good question. Not everyone has a lot of space. So I think I touched on this a little bit earlier when someone was talking about setting up neutral territory in their studio. You can set up a new exercise pen or combine the two pens together. Sometimes when I see things are going well, instead of having that third area and having them live there for a week, I might just take the two pens and sort of connect them together and open it up, but then have it set up so that I can quickly close a panel if they start to fight. Or sometimes I'll set one panel partly closed so they can go back and forth between sides. That's one technique that I use when there's limited space or limited places to set up neutral space. And another thing you can do is set up your other pen in the bedroom so that you're right there for 8 hours and hopefully you're a light sleeper. And that way you're right there with them other than having it be in the bathroom. So those are a couple of additional ideas on where to set up neutral territory.
Yeah, I don't know anyone who enjoys spending a night on the bathroom floor. So those are some great alternatives. Another question we have from a viewer is, do rabbits ever fight after getting along for a couple of days in neutral territory?
Yes, they do. I would say it happens maybe 5% or less of the time. And that's why, as Emily said, you do want to continue monitoring after those 2 days. I really have only had that happen maybe twice out of a couple hundred or so bondings. So it isn't common, but it does happen.
Great. Well, thank you. All right, so we've talked about the best case scenario. Now, sadly, not all bonds are meant to be. And while it's wonderful when you get a bonded pair on the first try, that's not always going to be the case. So it's important to know when to stop the bonding process for a particular pair. So definitely don't push the bond if it turns dangerous. If any rabbit falls ill, stops eating, or is otherwise not 100% healthy, call off the bond, at least until that rabbit recovers. So there are some warning signs you can look for, like the fact that none of the reset techniques that we suggested earlier worked, but also pay attention to your first rabbit's behavior even when they're not on a date. If they seem stressed or depressed, that's not a good sign. Also look for any displaced aggression when your rabbit takes out their frustration on you instead of the other rabbit. When I tried to bond my rabbit, who has been on his own for far too long, unfortunately, he would sit outside the other rabbit's pen just glaring at her. And then when I tried to walk by to get to the bathroom, he would come attack me. So, it's not his fault. It's not my fault. He just had no place to take out his frustrations except on my feet. So Reasons to call off the bond altogether would be if one rabbit shakes violently, breathes hard for more than a couple of seconds, if their teeth are chattering in each other's presence, not a good sign. It's really upsetting to think about, but a screaming rabbit believes they're going to die. So if you hear a rabbit scream, call it all off. You know, it could be a precursor for a heart attack. If one rabbit is badly injured, do not risk reintroducing the rabbits later on. Put a pause on bonding rabbits and get a stuffed toy instead in the meantime. So like we said, don't push it if it turns dangerous. Finding a good bonding match is difficult in rabbits. So if this one didn't work out, it's okay to try again as long as your rabbit seems up for it. I want to remind everyone to stay committed to your rabbit, right? It's heartbreaking for us to hear that a second rabbit was adopted, the bond didn't work out, and then the first rabbit was rehomed instead. When my rabbit took out his frustrations out on me, I also got bit in crossfire on a date, I didn't blame my rabbit. I didn't decide, well, now he's aggressive, let's keep the new one, right? Your rabbit loves you and it's just trying to defend themselves. So keep giving that love to them in return and working on finding a new friend. So if a date doesn't work out, give your rabbit that teddy bun we've been talking about. I know we had a few questions in the chat about what a teddy bun is. It's a teddy bear that looks like a rabbit. You see one on the screen in front of you. It may be hard to tell which is the teddy bun and which is the real rabbit. I'll let you take your guess. One is real, one is a toy. We had a rabbit named Gelato who got so used to giving kisses in return that they, when they were introduced to a new, sorry, let me start this part over. We had a rabbit named Gelato who got so used to giving kisses to his toy bunny, who obviously could not give grooming kisses in return, so that when Gelato met a rabbit that only wanted grooming and wouldn't give it back, Gelato was more than happy to bond with that rabbit. So giving a rabbit a toy in the meantime can help get them used to how they would want to interact with another rabbit. So if your rabbit seems up for it, go back to the rescue, try a different rabbit for bonding. You might want to consider bringing in a professional bonder for advice at this point. One easy way for you to help the dating process is to go on vacation. Michelle mentioned that a little bit earlier. If a rescue can board your rabbit while you're on vacation, you can ask them to work on dating and bonding with the rescue rabbits in their care while you're gone. And you'll come back to a pair already in the early stages of bonding. Just, you know, obviously work with a rescue that's nearby, ask if they can even do this, but it's a great option if it's available. So finally, it may surprise you to hear that some rabbits just aren't into other rabbits. Some rabbits have very loving relationships with cats. You can see that in the picture there, a rabbit and a cat. They can be a very good match. Occasionally dogs as well, but usually it's more often we hear about it with cats. And then sometimes you have a rabbit, whether through personality or circumstantially, that just wants to be alone with their humans. So as long as the rabbit is making that choice, that's a-okay. All right, so we've got a few questions for Michelle here. Someone was trying to bond their two neutered 6-year-old rabbits for over a year with cross-scenting using various techniques. The female attacks the male on sight, tries to bite, dig at him through the pen. Is there any hope at all, or should they just call it off?
That's a difficult one. I think if they've been using all of the standard techniques of switching them back and forth, and the one rabbit is just persistently attacking, that this may be a situation where you're going to have two separate rabbits. Maybe they can groom through the pen or a divider. Sometimes rabbits just work out a relationship like that. I knew someone who had two rabbits that were bonded, and as they aged, the one rabbit became sort of disabled. And sensing that, the other rabbit started sort of picking on him and chasing him, and he had arthritis, and it sort of became a negative thing. They still loved each other, but it was becoming stressful for the sick rabbit. And under those circumstances, what she did was she set up a pen divider, and the bunnies continued to sleep next to each other and groom one another. And she was able to control the weight of the sick rabbit a little bit better that way. But there was the healthy rabbit was no longer able to chase and sort of harass the sick one. So you might work out something along those lines, or simply decide that your female rabbit, in that case, the female rabbit is the one that was presenting the problem, will have to be in one room and maybe get the other rabbit a friend. Again, working with a rescue, because you don't want to have 3 rabbits in 3 separate areas.
Right.
But yeah, that's a very difficult, and sometimes it just isn't going to work. You can try to use a little bit more. The thing about using stress bonding to bond rabbits that don't want to bond or that are not working out well is that if that bond isn't really stable, they can debond down the line when you're not at home. And this is one reason why I don't like to do what I call forced bondings. Stress bonding techniques are one thing. Now we're talking about forcing 2 rabbits that really, like, say you have 2 alpha rabbits. That wasn't the case with this example, but it's possible to have 2 alpha rabbits and they can be bonded, and then one has to go to the veterinarian for a procedure and comes back, and then they fight. Another example I have is that I had a very pushy rabbit, and she had the love of her life. His name was Hop Noodle. Hop Noodle had to have his eye removed. Obviously, they couldn't go to surgery together. So he came back and she was chasing him and he ran into the bedpost. Poor bunny. So the point is, under those circumstances, sometimes you just have to say, I'm not willing to take this risk with my rabbit to push a bond that doesn't look like it's likely to work out. I never regret not bonding rabbits that look dicey, because, we want them all to be healthy and thrive.
We do. That's right. Thank you. So to keep moving along, we have one last quick section. We will talk about bonding trios and groups. So bonding trios is a great situation because this means they'll always have a friend to rely on if one of the trio passes away. That said, sometimes one of the rabbits can get left out. It can also be harder to monitor health indicators like how much food is being eaten, litter box habits, things like that, when you have more than just 2 rabbits. Trios can also be one of the least stable combinations. So keeping the original bonded pair, if you do go through with it, keeping the original bonded pair together throughout is usually the best strategy. It's possible they could debond over the 3rd rabbit, which would require 3 living spaces. Like Michelle said, you want to avoid that if possible. It's not really the outcome we're looking for here. You want to head off debonding by always keeping the original pair together and calling off the bond if you see any displaced aggression toward the partner, towards those 2 original bonded pairs, bonded pair. All right, so bonding groups. The biggest pro to bonding groups, aside from all the bonding love you're about to have in your life, is that you're able to save so many extra lives. Like I said at the very beginning of the presentation, pairs are often overlooked for adoption, but groups are even more ignored. Bonding 4 or more rabbits is surprisingly typically the easiest way to combine rabbits. Of course, it does make it harder, like I said, to watch for health issues, watching eating, litter box habits, and all that extra fur around can lead to digestive issues in rabbits, considering they're prone to GI tract problems from too much fur. Combine 2 pairs as you would 2 individual rabbits with side-by-side living, cross-scenting, etc. If you have more than 2 separate rabbit family units, it's best to put them all together at once in neutral territory. But you'll need a team of people to bond large groups safely. So take that into consideration. When a fight breaks out in one area, it can set off all rabbits in another. So you want to be careful of that. And when bonding large groups, it helps to have a big area with boxes so lots of rabbits can hide if they need to. Now, the safest groups are formed with baby bunnies, but this doesn't last long. Babies can start fighting at just 7 to 8 weeks of age. And elderly rabbits or disabled rabbits who become wiser, a little more easygoing, a bit more dependent on rabbits. Just like with any other combination, teenage or young adult groups may change dynamics as the rabbits age, leading to the group splitting up. So likewise, if a rabbit leaves the group dynamics may start to shift, and rabbits may fight as they establish a new hierarchy. All right, so bonding trios and groups, Q&A. Somebody sent an email ahead saying that we're thinking of getting another rabbit to add to our pair to form a trio. How do we know if we should get a male or a female? Our male is dominant. Should we try the male first with the new bunny?
Yes, trios are, in my experience, the most difficult combination, trios and small groups, because they've already paired off. And when you're adding another one, you're changing this little paired off dynamics pretty dramatically. In the formation of trios is a little bit different in that sex and personality become extremely important. So if you have a dominant male, I would start with the most submissive female you can find, and I would treat them as if you were introducing two rabbits. I would treat the pair as one unit of rabbit and the new bunny as another, and then switch them back and forth, cross-scenting over quite a bit of time before you introduce them, if possible. Of course, if you're doing speed dating, you just try it and see who looks best. And again, try to set it up so that you have a solution if the third one doesn't work out. Because a lot of times the pair won't let a third rabbit in. And it can be surprising. It might not be the dominant rabbit in the pair that doesn't want the other one in. So for example, if you introduce the pair to a new girl rabbit that's submissive, and the male and the new female might get along, he might be willing to let her in, but the other female's like, no way, you know? So the dynamics can definitely change as you add, and again, if you're dealing with a group, subtract rabbits. So you can try that, and then if it looks like it's not, the problem is the female, then you might have to try a different sex or a different disposition of a rabbit. But when you have a pair that consists of a male and a female, and one of those is dominant, you want to introduce the opposite sex of a submissive, a very submissive rabbit of either sex is the most important to be submissive to that trio. The easiest trios that I found were formed using a preformed same-sex pair and adding another rabbit. So for example, I recently seamlessly bonded a trio with two fairly easygoing, although one of them is a little bit dominant, female rabbits that were tightly bonded, and then I added a male in, and he was very dominant, but they bonded instantly. And I have to admit that one of the reasons they bonded instantly might have been because they came from the same group of rabbits. But as we all know, siblings can break up as they mature. So just because they came from the same place or because they're relatives doesn't necessarily make the bonding easier. But it might have in this case because they had a history together. When you have two females or two males and you're adding a third bunny, that increases the chances of the pair splitting up. So you're trying to add a third rabbit, save another life, just because you fell in love with a third rabbit, and you end up with three separate rabbits. And that's the worst case scenario. And that's why you have to be really careful to preserve the initial bond, particularly if the initial bond is of same-sex pair.
Great. So real quick, there's one more question. I think it's super interesting. This person has 4 sets of pairs of rabbits. They're all neutered. They're moving in a month. They want to know the best way to bond them all. Do they bond them with 2 pairs and 2 pairs, or do they just throw them all together at once?
They throw them all together at once.
Fast answer there. Yeah. Throw them all together. Great. Thank you.
Well, but only if they have the people to watch over them, because and then if they have more than one really top bunny, alpha bunny in that grouping, it might not work. But so the easiest rabbits to bond are adults in a large group. That's the easiest to bond. You can usually put 1 or 2 in and then supervise them closely, and they just sort of meld in because they're partly because they're intimidated by the large number of other rabbits, and also rabbits are naturally herd animals, right? But they also sometimes have their special friends. So pairs are second easiest. In terms of, and the trios and small groups are hard, especially like in the 3 to 7 rabbit range. 8, maybe you're getting more toward the herd mentality. 8 may also be hard, but try it. Put all 8 of them together and treat them like a group bonding. And then if it doesn't work out, then you can identify who the alpha, the top bunnies are, and maybe have each one of them in a group of, maybe you'll end up with a group of 6 and 2, or a group of 4 and 4. You still kind of cut down on your number of rabbit units so that you can give each unit more space. It's still better than having 4 separate pairs, which I can see might be logistically difficult depending on the space that you have. And you of course want to give every rabbit unit as much space, every rabbit family as much space as possible, right?
Right, so put them all together with lots of supervision, and then know that eventually if one is super dominant, you'll have to maybe separate a little subgroup out or 2.
Yeah. So with the, I wanted to say a couple more things about bonding groups. So you do need a lot of supervision in the beginning with very large groups. And if you're a rescuer, or if you are adopting any of them out, or if sadly some of them pass away, you are going to have a change in the dynamics, and it could be that they will start to fight. For example, we have done several large rabbit rescues, and we start out with some large groups, and what happens over time is as we adopt them out, you get down to maybe 8 rabbits, and then the rest split off in different directions. They debond. And that's why you have to keep an eye on the situation whenever you have one rabbit leave or enter the group as well. And also with small groups, this is one of the cases where I really do encourage people to use the technique of keeping them in a really smaller space. So maybe 3 to 7, 8, in that range, you will probably have better luck giving them a smaller space to bond in and getting them interacting with one another versus a huge space, which I use for very large groups, because they will separate and form their little cliques and groups when you have a really big group. And you can have more than one sort of dominant rabbit in a very large group, because they'll have their followers of their mini herds within a really big herd. But when you do that, you need to give them lots of boxes to hide in and get away, so that they don't feel too stressed if they're sort of one of those more traumatized rabbits, that they have a place to hide. Because again, the most important thing is that everybody stay healthy.
All right, so thank you. All right, so to recap, winning the dating game is a long, slow, patient process for both you and the rabbits, but it is a well-earned victory when it does succeed. Highlights to remember include allowing your rabbit to choose their bonding partner from a pool of applicants you and the rescue have deemed likely to succeed. Set up your home with neutral spaces and a calm atmosphere. Don't allow any injuries, and always end on a high note. Slow and steady wins the race here, so stay positive and be patient. Acknowledge when you need to stop or call in a professional for help. And once you have the match, don't break up those love bonds. So thank you so much for learning about the bonding process with me. I hope it leads to a lot of happy rabbit matches out there. And I will take a little bit of time to go back to Tara, who's been watching your questions, and keep hearing from Michelle for any advice on tough spots you've been encountering in your own bonding process. Thank you, everyone.
Hey everyone, we did get a lot of questions. I have over 150. So obviously, unfortunately, we cannot get through every single question. But I'm going to ask a few here that I flagged, and hopefully they'll help with some of your questions. And if not, we can discuss at the end. If there's maybe an email address, we can have you send questions to and such. So Michelle, how long does it usually take for a rabbit to recover from a negative bonding experience, approximately? Is there a limit or?
Yeah, we rabbit bonders typically say we need at least 6 weeks time for them to sort of forget and get over it. And during that time, it's wise to continue switching litter boxes and to try to introduce that stuffed teddy bun that Emily talked about. And maybe rub it on the one rabbit and give it to the other one so that they can get used to a rabbit shape that smells like the other rabbit. But I would wait at least 6 weeks. And I want to tell a little story here. So I had 2 rabbits, Sasha and not Sasha. And that it was very frustrating because they would get along for 4 hours and then they'd fight, and then 6 hours and they'd fight. And I'd be like, my entire evenings are being eaten up by these dates and they look promising. But they were both alpha rabbits. But one of them was a little bit more dominant. I'm like, I feel like this is going to work out, but it's just not, I'm eating huge amounts of time up and they look like they're going to work out. And then they fight before those 24 hours are up. So I finally said, okay, I'm busy anyway. I'm going to put this on this. I'm going to take a deep breath. And I put them in side-by-side pens and I switched to litter boxes and bunnies back and forth for 6 months. Then I reintroduced them 100% good from then on. Like the first date I took them after that, they were good. I didn't have to separate them after that. And they've never had any aggression or problems since. So a lot of it is just being really patient, taking a step back, saying, okay, just pretend like they're not going to bond, but then keep working on stuff.
There you go.
Yeah.
That works. What are the most common mistakes new rabbit bonders make?
Where do I start? I know this would never happen for any of you, but they try to put together rabbits that are not neutered. Back in the old days, I remember hearing about someone adopting an unaltered male rabbit from the animal shelter for their unaltered male, and the one killed the other. I mean, that's just common sense that the rabbits have to be neutered. Now, it is possible to put together 2 females that are not spayed. It's a continuum. So in terms of bondability, if they're not fixed, and you are in a situation, let's say you're in a country where it's hard to get spays and neuters, there are reasons why you couldn't fix them for medical reasons. The easiest bondings, of course, are babies, really old rabbits, but more babies than old rabbits. Female, but you can't put 2 unaltered adult males together. That's really unwise. Or a male and female that are not fixed, because they're probably going to fight. And when they're fixed, I would say that you are best off going with male female first. Sex does matter, disposition matters more, but in our experience, just slightly more than 50% of dominant rabbits tend to be female. So 6 mistakes that new rabbit bonders make. I made a list. Trying to bond unaltered rabbits, not allowing the rabbit to pick their bunny friend, picking the one that you want, not the one that your bunny wants. A lot of times when you work with a rescue, they will allow you to pick, say, 5 rabbits that you like, and then your bunny gets to pick out of those, and that way it's the best of both worlds. But you really want to not try to force a bond with a rabbit that your rabbit doesn't like. Number 3, trying to introduce a rabbit into another rabbit's territory, not making sure that you have neutral territory. So a lot of times people who don't know about rabbit bonding, like you talk about rabbit bonding, they're like, yeah, rabbit bonding, yeah. And then they put one bunny into another bunny's space and they fight. That's a surprisingly common problem. Trying to bond the rabbits too quickly, not being patient enough to give it time to do it slowly and safely. Continuing with a technique that doesn't work for the rabbits. Let's say they're trying them in the bathroom and they don't work. The rabbits don't get along in the bathroom, and then you just keep trying that. If it doesn't work, don't keep doing that. And finally, separating rabbits to go to the veterinarian or the groomer, because if that rabbit, especially if you go to the groomer and the groomer has groomed some other rabbit's scent glands, the worst could happen where one rabbit could come back smelling like another rabbit. You know, that's why were you out there whoring around with another rabbit? I'm not going to get along. You don't want to take the one rabbit away from the other and separate them. You want to keep them together. Like, you don't want to take one rabbit to the office with you and leave the other one at home. They really seriously need to stay together all the time, except for if one goes in for an operation. So those are the 6 biggest mistakes new rabbit caretakers make.
Awesome. Sadly, someone mentioned one of their rabbits, they had a bonded pair, and one of them unfortunately passed away. A female lost her husband, and she is depressed and barely eating. How soon after one of the rabbits passed did you get another one?
I'm really sorry for your loss. I know it's hard for you to lose a rabbit as well as the other rabbit. So I have a very clear philosophy on this based on experience, and that is rabbits, when they are grieving, they can get sick and they can die after the other rabbit. Now, presuming that, first of all, you do have to make sure that your surviving rabbit isn't ill. Let's say if you don't know the cause you need to know that the cause of the first rabbit's death wasn't something contagious that your other rabbit could have and could subsequently pass away from. So you want to make sure that the surviving rabbit is healthy. And then you want to introduce another rabbit right away. And the reason I say that is because the depression and stress from losing the partner is more dangerous and health threatening than having a new rabbit in the home. But you do have to make sure your surviving rabbit is healthy before you introduce that second rabbit. But I always encourage people to bring back in another rabbit right away. Now, the surviving rabbit might not be willing to accept a new rabbit. They might still be looking for the other one and saying, I'm not going to cheat on my spouse, but the presence of the second rabbit serves as a distraction from their grief. And I really think that's important. A lot of people treat like one rabbit losing another like as if people lost a partner and saying, well, they need time to adjust to it. But that's dangerous because during that time, the rabbit is still lonely and still depressed and still looking for the other rabbit. Some of them will, that they could refuse to eat or get sick, and the stress could cause their immune depression, and then they could get sick and they can again pass away. And that's why I tell people, just get another rabbit right away, because it will completely, like, what's that other rabbit doing in my territory? It will distract them from that, really the deep depression of losing a mate.
Yeah, that's really so sad, but makes sense. So we got another question here. Someone said, my one rabbit grooms the other to the point where she has broken skin on the forehead. They get along, but they're worried about infection. How do I get her sister to stop over grooming?
This is one of the most difficult problems that you encounter when grooming rabbits, or when bonding rabbits are grooming each other. And it's because they're bonded, they love each other, and it's a very difficult situation, but you can't allow one rabbit to barber the other to the point of injury. Then you have to separate the rabbits. So I have a couple of stories in connection with this. Well, actually, I've known several people who've had same-sex bondings, particularly two girls, where the one would groom the other one to the point where there was, it was raw or bleeding. And then when you separate them, they both stop eating because they miss each other. So in that case, you just have to have it, again, like I talked about that one case where we had a healthy and a sick rabbit, and there was like a fence between them so that they could groom and interact, but they can't really harm each other. Maybe you could set up a situation where there's sort of really fine mesh so they can't actually groom, but they can see and be near one another. That's a solution to that particular problem. But really, I would call off the bonding if one rabbit is grooming the other to the point of injury. A lot of
Okay.
times because if the one rabbit is tolerating it, we see a lot of cases where rabbits will groom the other one in the eye, and the other rabbit will like kind of flinch, and then they will train each other. They will negotiate and work it out so that the one doesn't, because when the one rabbit grooms the eye too much, the other rabbit will start to avoid them. And so they typically will learn not to overgroom the eye. But when they're grooming like the forehead or someplace else where the other rabbit tolerates it for a long period of time, that's a serious problem. And it really is one of the reasons why I would call off a bonding. Now, another example I have is I had a rabbit once, and I bonded him with this little dwarf Hoto. She was really cute. They loved each other. They were very passionate, groomy, kissy, kissy. She literally groomed and sort of almost chewed a hole in the top, like it was bleeding. And so I had to separate them. And I had them separate for a couple of days, and she passed away. And we had a necropsy done, and she had EC lesions in her brain. So it was one of those things where she had brain damage, basically, which was causing her to behave the way she did. So, the over grooming can be a sign of some psychological distress, and it can change over time, and then you can reintroduce them later. But I would definitely separate rabbits that are that's called barbering, when they like pull hair out and dig holes in the other rabbit. Yeah.
Wow. Which physical and personality traits make it easiest and most difficult to bond rabbits? In other words, what constitutes an easy or difficult bonder?
Oh, let me talk about easy bonders first. So the easy bonder is the one that when one rabbit chases that rabbit, the rabbit will run away instead of turning around and engaging. The easy bonder is one that will allow a certain amount of humping. And now you don't want to allow that to continue, even if the bottom bunny tolerates it. If one bunny is humping the other an awful lot, especially in the first couple of days, you might want to peel the humper off the humpy, especially if they're anchoring with their teeth, because you don't want the bottom rabbit to, they might tolerate for a while, but then after a while they'll get fed up. You never know. So the rabbit that's willing to tolerate a lot, that avoids, doesn't fight back no matter what, those are rare, but not super rare. But the majority of rabbits are neither will always attack nor will always avoid. The vast majority of rabbits are rabbits that will fight will always fight back when provoked, but might not necessarily provoke it. So on the other end of the continuum, you have the ones that are not going to bond. And it is not always possible to predict this from the speed date. The speed date gives you an idea. I have seen very dominant rabbits bond with other rabbits, surprisingly so. And particularly if they're side-by-side pens for a length of time. Two dominant rabbits, really hard. But a rabbit that doesn't bond with any other rabbits might be one of the rabbits that uses their mouth a lot to express. Maybe they bite people and animals. It's going to be really hard to get another rabbit to, and you don't want the other rabbit hurt. So if the rabbit is super bitey, I wouldn't necessarily want to try to bond that rabbit with another rabbit. The most difficult rabbit to bond, in my experience, and one that, again, you can't tell from the speed date, is the fear biter. The rabbit that's so fearful and continues to be that fearful around other rabbits that they will avoid and stress, and then eventually they will snap and bite. And those really you can't bond with any other rabbit. But it takes time to discover which ones those are, whereas the ones that rush at the other rabbit and bite, they're sending you a pretty clear signal right away that they're not likely to bond with another rabbit. And only time will tell with these cases. And that's why, again, it's really important to talk to somebody who knows the rabbit. If the rabbit has a history of bonding with other rabbits, if the rabbit comes from a large group of other rabbits in recent history, that will tell you it's going to be easier. If the rabbit obviously has a history of not getting along with other rabbits, that's why it's so important to ask anyone who's been taking care of the rabbit for history of that rabbit. Let's see what else. Trying to think. Easy, difficult. One thing I would say is not a sign one way or another. People will say, well, my rabbit's lived alone all her life, or since I've had her for 4 years. I don't think that she would like other rabbits. That doesn't mean anything. Just because a rabbit has been alone all their life, it is by their nature to want to live with other rabbits. They're herd rabbits. They're herd animals. And so they like being around other beings, whether it's going to be a rabbit or not a rabbit, we'll find out. But just because they've been alone for a while doesn't mean they can't bond with another rabbit. Hopefully I've covered most of the ground there.
Yeah. So Michelle, I don't know how we are kind of a little bit over on time. I have some more questions, but it's up to you. And one thing I do want to mention is that a few people have asked about, we're in the middle of COVID times. It's hard to do speed dating. And so some people have found themselves adopting a rabbit for meeting their rabbit. Do you have any advice for people looking for another rabbit in the middle of this difficult period, or do you suggest they wait, or what is your advice there?
That's going to depend on whether or not the shelter or rescue takes back animals. And of course, most of us probably wouldn't want to return anyway. I would say go into it with the knowledge that it might not work out, and be prepared to make a long-term commitment to that second or third or whatever rabbit. This is not the time to venture out into trios or small groups. If you have one rabbit and you want to get a second one and introduce them very slowly and keep them separate, that's more likely to work out. I wouldn't say, if you had two, I wouldn't say, oh, now's a good time to get a third or two more. Maybe wait until you're able to do speed dating or trial dating in a neutral space. I know that some groups have not been able to do their regular mobile adoptions where they have an off-site. Does everyone know what mobiles are? They're when you have a pet store or some other place that's hosting an adoption event and you meet there with your rabbit, and then the rescue group or shelter brings their rabbits and you can go on speed dates there. A lot of those have been discontinued, but rescues and shelters are doing speed dating just by appointment only. And you just have to be patient until they have a slot and a space to do that in. So ask if that's a possibility first. Again, you really can't just pick out a rabbit and know that it's going to work out. But I would say the vast majority of the time, if you do if you know a little bit about the history of the second rabbit, say that rabbit had a friend previously, that really helps you get some information there. And then very, very slowly introduce them, after keeping them, if you've made the commitment to that second rabbit, using the side-by-side pen and switching them back and forth. And one of the last techniques that I've started using more and more recently is the teddy bun technique, where you put one with one rabbit, the teddy bun with one rabbit, get the smell on it, move it with the other one. You just have to be really sure that no one is ingesting, because you certainly don't want a blockage. And that will help most rabbits. Most two rabbits will bond if you go very slowly, gradually, and use all these cross-scenting techniques. But just go into it with that mentality that they might not bond, and you're making a lifetime commitment to the rabbit.
Speaking of lifetime commitments, how do you feel about bonding a senior bun? Is that recommended, or like, let's say they lost a partner a while ago, or even just then, or they hadn't had a partner at all their whole lives, and you want to get a second rabbit? Is it recommended to adopt bond a senior bun, or how do you feel about that?
So it's a little bit different if they are an older rabbit and haven't had a bunny friend all their lives. it might be a little bit of a change to them. Change is stressful for rabbits. But most of the time, senior rabbits bond and disabled rabbits bond more easily with other rabbits because they like having another bunny that they're dependent on, and bonding a group of rabbits with the same level of energy in terms of if they're really obviously you don't want one that's going to be zipping around and if you have an older group, but it's easier to bond older rabbits typically if they've had friends before, because they are slower and not, when you're bonding those younger rabbits, particularly if they're under a year of age, sometimes they'll just be like, one will bump into the other one, they go, woo, and then start fighting. So having a group of elder buns and disabled rabbits together is so sweet. They can help prop one another up. And so I definitely encourage people who have who have older rabbits to put older rabbits together. I think that's a fantastic idea. It gives them that support system.